The Democrats have a clear message, and the convention is going, knock on wood, pretty great. And we'll break down how and why. But we also know the Republicans are preparing to start hitting back. We'll get you ready to respond to what they're cooking up for us. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join a majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, Jason, I know you're a fan of the sports, and so I'm going to give you my power ranking. I've basically watched every speech at the convention, and here's the power ranking here. Number 1, well, let's go in reverse order. Number 5, Joe Biden. Number 4, AOC. Number 3, Doug Burgum or Doug. No, Emhoff, not Burgum.
Different party.
Number 2, Barack Obama. Number 1, Michelle Obama. So let's talk about her first. Let's go to a clip of her hitting Trump.
Now, unfortunately, we know what comes next. We know folks are going to do everything they can to distort her truth. My husband and I sadly know a little something about this. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of 2 hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs? Look, it's his same old con.
I'll tell you what struck me about this. What struck me about this is the things that we as Democrats were afraid to say, even including jokes just a few years ago, right? We were afraid to lean into who our coalition was. So even when Obama was president, like the party didn't lean in to the idea that he was black with a large audience, right? Sure, with black audiences, yes, but not with a wholesale broadcast audience. And in the past, we never would have made a joke like that because we would have been worried that the other side could take that and ship it to white voters and say, oh, they think it's only a job for black people now, you know? And it's just interesting how things have changed, not just with regard to our momentum as a party and therefore our confidence to say what we want to say and motivate our side the way we want and even persuade the way that we want, but also the way that the 360-degree view of politicians has been shaped by the social media age, by new media, that you figure whatever you say is going to get spun in one way or another. So you may as well just talk exactly the way you want to talk and make the jokes you want to make.
Well, another thing that both Michelle and Barack Obama did extremely well, that if I'm being honest, some of the other speakers could learn from, is they quickly pivoted to talking about Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And they really sold Kamala Harris. Let's go to a clip from Michelle here.
Kamala Harris is more than ready for this moment. She is one of the most qualified people ever to seek the office of the presidency. And she is one of the most dignified. A tribute to her mother, to my mother, and to your mother too. The embodiment of the stories we tell ourselves about this country. Her story is your story. It's my story. It's the story of the vast majority of Americans trying to build a better life. Look, Kamala knows, like we do, that regardless of where you come from, what you look like, who you love, how you worship, or what's in your bank account, we all deserve the opportunity to build a decent life. All of our contributions deserve to be accepted and valued. Because no one has a monopoly on what it means to be an American. No one.
Which, you know, what she has in common with one Diana Kander is neither seem to be aging, Jason.
Yeah, it's true.
What's going on here? It's amazing.
And meanwhile,
exactly
I'm aging faster than Obama. You know,
I mean, you and Obama, by normal standards, are aging quite well. But Michelle looks incredible. It's crazy. Now, I think what she did was remind us of these fairly young and for political life people who are not much different in age than than Harris or Walz. They're kind of the same age.
Oh yeah, I mean, what Barack Obama's 4 years older.
Yeah, I think he's 63.
Kamala Harris. Yeah,
it's like, so these are people who really should still be in our life. And I think what's notable to me is, although Biden was the vice president under Obama, he had such a long political life before Obama that his presidency didn't really feel like a continuation of the Obama legacy. And also he was contending with dynamics both within the party and outside of the party that were very much anathema to Obama's ethos and his values. And what was clear to me last night, and this is in the long line of news, David Plouffe taking over as strategist for the campaign, Mitch Stewart jumping into the campaign, Harris having a universal message, right? That the Obama legacy is as strong as it's ever been. And in many ways, what's happening is the campaign of Harris is revisiting Obamaism for what it is, which is this unifying, positive, forward-looking vision for the future, a charity of spirit, a big tent, avoiding using language that's divisive and emphasizing what makes us different, and really leaning in to what makes us similar and the sort of the shared journey that we're on. And I'm here for it, Jason.
Yeah, people keep talking about this as, oh, Democrats can be joyful. Democrats can be happy. We forgot, or maybe we didn't know. And what I would point to is a couple of things. One, you were on the 2008 Obama campaign. I don't think anybody would have. I think a joyful fight, happy warriors is a good way to describe that, particularly that 2008 campaign. You know, there was a lot of respect for John McCain. So there was no like, this is everything. If we don't get this, the country will end. And, you know, don't get me wrong, those things are not untrue. Like, I mean, I don't know if the country will end, but the stakes are enormous and there is fascism waiting in the wings. But the Obama-ish, you know, we're going to have respect for other people. We're going to listen to other people. That's really important. But so is just like what Kamala Harris's personality brings to the campaign. I mean, she is a happy warrior. She is a person who brings a lot of joy. And I think that it makes it very easy to channel the continuation of that movement.
Well, you know, I went to the first Obama summit, which was right after Trump took office. And Obama at the beginning of the summit said some things that really struck me. We may even have spoken about them on this podcast, where he talked about, this was like at a point where, you know, the left honestly was fed up and people were turning on each other and weren't listening to each other. And he gave a cautionary note that sounded very similar to something he said last night. Let's go to this clip.
I am feeling hopeful because this convention has always been pretty good to kids with funny names who believe in a country where anything is possible. Because we have a chance to elect someone who has spent her entire life trying to give people the same chances America gave her. Someone who sees you and hears you and will get up every single day and fight for you. The next president of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Okay,
And
so well, let me just
yeah.
say that's a good example of what you were talking about, of him sort of extending the Obama presidency and the Obama years into the Harris years. But yeah, I think we played the wrong one, so we're gonna play the right one. And again, you teed this up as him making the argument about we don't need to dehumanize the other side. We need to understand the other side and then win them over.
That sense of mutual respect has to be part of our message. Our politics have become so polarized these days that all of us across the political spectrum seem so quick to assume the worst in others, unless they agree with us on every single issue. We start thinking that the only way to win is to scold and shame and out-yell the other side. And after a while, regular folks just tune out, or they don't bother to vote. Now, that approach may work for the politicians who just want attention and thrive on division, but it won't work for us. To make progress on the things we care about, the things that really affect people's lives, we need to remember that we've all got our blind spots and contradictions and prejudices, and that if we want to win over those who aren't yet ready to support our candidates, we need to listen to their concerns and maybe learn something in the process. After all, if a parent or grandparent occasionally says something that makes us cringe, we don't automatically assume they're bad people. We recognize that the world is moving fast, that they need time and maybe a little encouragement to catch up. Our fellow citizens deserve the same grace we hope they'll extend to us.
This was the most important thing said, other than what Doug said in his speech to humanize Kamala Harris. I think that he was speaking as much to people within the Democratic Party as people outside of it. And this is something that, from all indications, has really bothered Obama about the direction of the Democratic Party and the left since he left office. And I was glad to see it. I mean, it's so important. And it's actually, Jason, it's central to the mission of this podcast. It's what we're about.
Yeah. I mean, I live in the middle of the country. I work with, spend time with people who don't vote the same as me. And I talk to them about this stuff. And if I treat them like there's something deeply wrong with them, they're probably not going to listen to what I have to say. And, you know, Obama, the caricature of him by the right is a caricature, this sort of out of touch, elitist, you know, highly educated person from Hawaii, and then, you know, spent time on the East Coast and everything. But what they forget is that, one, his mother and his grandparents were from Kansas, and he was raised a lot with that sensibility. And two, his entire professional life was spent in Chicago up until becoming president. And now, you know, they're spent a lot of time there, and that's where he's building his library and everything. So his sensibility is very Midwestern. Without, you know, divulging any confidences, I've spoken to him about this, about the difference in the ability to break through. Like, actually, he spoke to me about it, but the difference in the ability to break through everything when you come from a Midwestern sensibility. It's not just a kindness; it is a genuine interest in what other people feel and what they have to say, and speaking to them without a great deal of judgment. And I think he does that as well as anybody. And what he also does.
Yeah, I was going to say elevate the discussion, Jason.
Yeah. Let me elevate
it.
What he also has an artist's ability to do it. Two things. One, his comedic chops are seriously underrated and have been, no matter how nice of things you say about Barack Obama, you are still underrating his comedic chops, which I'm going to get to here in a second. But so are his political instincts. So we're going to play this clip that a lot of people have already seen, where he is trolling Trump and appears to very much be making an endowment joke, a penis-sized joke. But then we're going to break it down. So, okay, let's go ahead and play it.
The childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on.
Okay, if you're listening to this and you somehow haven't seen it, we'll describe what he does there is when he's talking about crowd sizes, his hands are a certain distance apart, then he brings them together, then he sort of glances down when his hands are closest together as if he's measuring something very small and looks kind of surprised by it and then looks up and moves on. So obviously, this is a very subtle sort of genius dig at Trump to say this is why he's so upset about crowd sizes. This is why he's, what he's compensating for something. But what makes Obama so smart is the way he's learned from mistakes in the past, in that Obama, in his actual actions, other than this quick comedic sort of spit take sort of thing that he does, he in no way betrays that he's intentionally doing anything. So if Trump goes out and talks about that, if the Fox News tries to say something about it, Obama has full plausible deniability. I mean, we're showing it here. Obama can say, look, they can read into this whatever they want. That says more about them. I was just saying that it's weird that he cares about crowd sizes. That's kind of some genius level trolling, but also some genius level politics. And I think about moments in his career when he hasn't gotten this exactly right. I can remember, I think it was his last State of the Union, or maybe his second to last, when he was starting a point about something, and he said, "Look, I have run my last race. I have run my last election," and the Republicans started cheering, and Obama sort of impulsively says, "I know, because I won them both." And then you could see on his face, he's like, "Why did I do that? I had the moment I needed." And so you can see the way he, even somebody at his level, is learning from this stuff. But it's great because it's going to drive Trump crazy. We don't have the clip because I didn't ask them to get it because I didn't think about it. But this clip made me think of my favorite thing is when in Obama's speech is the way he characterizes Trump is so perfect in the way he sets up a contrast with Kamala, because he says this is a 78-year-old billionaire who, from the moment he came down his golden escalator, has been doing nothing but whining about his problems. And then he quickly contrasts that to Kamala Harris, who's somebody who's interested in your problems. And I think that is a perfect frame for the election.
Well, one more speech that I thought really, I think did some work for the Harris campaign is her husband's speech. Let's go to a clip.
And that's when something unexpected happened. In 2013, I walked into a contentious client meeting. We worked through the issue, and by the end of the meeting, the now happy client offered to set me up on a blind date, which is how I ended up with Kamala Harris's phone number. Now, for generations, people have debated when to call the person you're being set up with. And never in history has anyone suggested 8:30 a.m. And yet, that's when I dialed. I got Kamala's voicemail, and I just started rambling. "Hey, it's Doug. I'm on my way to an early meeting. Again, it's Doug." I remember I was trying to grab the words out of the air and just put them back in my mouth. And for what seemed like far too many minutes, I hung up. By the way, Kamala saved that voicemail, and she makes me listen to it on every anniversary. But that mess.
Ravi, you're friends with my cousin Sam, who likes to say, and in fact, I told Doug Emhoff this once, which he very much enjoyed, that Doug Emhoff is the hero of all awkward Jewish men who have married significantly out of their league.
It's funny. The interesting story about Doug is, I think this must have been right in between the election in 2020 and inauguration, as I got a call from somebody in his camp saying, would you like to be his chief of staff
Really?
or interview for his chief of staff? And it just didn't make sense of where I was at the time, which I think was in Costa Rica surfing. I didn't want to come back, but but it made me
were in your life at that moment was in Costa Rica surfing.
But I was thinking about it watching him last night, man. I was like, man, I would have had a good time with this guy. He seems such a cool dude,
Yeah, absolutely.
And seems relatively easy to work with. You never know, but he seems pretty chill. Our buddy Mike Murphy tweeted about this, saying that this was effectively the most effective speech, which I agree. I think it did a whole lot for Harris.
Let's real quick. Jeremy went ahead and pulled the Obama clip that I was talking about because he's quick on his feet. Let's listen to that, and then I want to sort of wrap up this little section by talking about what I think is so effective about the Democratic message right now and why I'm so excited. So let's go ahead and watch that clip real quick of Obama framing the entire campaign in terms of Trump.
The people who will decide this election are asking a very simple question. Who will fight for me? Who's thinking about my future, about my children's future, about our future together? One thing is for certain, Donald Trump is not losing sleep over that question. Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on.
I mean, why not play that last bit twice? I mean, it's pretty great. But so what I love this because it's framing it perfectly in saying to people, like, I think anytime you can reveal to people the motive, the motivation and of the person you're running against or the person you're opposing, it gives the viewer, the jury, whoever it is you're talking to, the voter, the ability to more critically examine everything that is said by the other side, right? It's why in any sort of criminal case, you have to establish motive. Right? And so that's what he's doing, is he's saying this guy only cares about himself. And by saying, like, all he does is gripe about his own problems, I think anybody who is paying any attention goes, yeah, actually, that is all he does. So that the next time Trump is complaining about how difficult the media is on him or saying this was fixed or that was fixed, they'll maybe hear Obama's voice saying, all he does is talk about his problems. He doesn't care about yours, which brings me to why I'm so excited, which is that the Democratic Party, for the first time in a long time, has a very simple message. Now, we've always had, not always, we have more frequently than people have given us credit for, had good messaging. But I think that the message is very simple. And, somebody tweeted about it, and I really liked it. It was Alex Cole said, for the first time in years, I finally feel like Democrats have the right messaging. And then they had three basic sentences here. We're not going back. Mind your own damn business and freedom. And I think that's totally right. And it's so strange because the Republican Party for so long has been the small government, keep government, keep politicians out of your business sort of party. Now, they've been doing this by bastardizing policies that are really about keeping government out of literal corporate business policy and then turning that into keeping it out of your business. But with the Dobbs decision, with their obsession with whether or not people have children, with Trump clearly wanting to have control over everything with regard to the government and have maximum amounts of power as president, it really sets up a very clear contrast where we're able to say, we're the ones who want to let you alone, just leave you alone. And they don't want that. And this country needs to go forward, not backwards. And it's really clarifying.
Well, one more piece of positive news before we talk about some less fun stuff. Harris and Walz last night, and we're recording this on Wednesday midday, last night, as the convention was going on, they went across to Milwaukee, and I think the same facility that the RNC was held in held a 15,000 person rally at the same time the DNC was going on, which was quite the move. Let's go to this clip.
Are you ready to have your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Man, I just love the freedom messaging so much. And I love what we've done with it. I love that finally the party has leaned into the idea of like, where the other side has characterized freedom as like owning all the guns you want. We are characterizing it as freedom from gun violence, right? Freedom to actually have healthcare. We've been sort of dancing around it for so long. And now they've got freedom up all over the rafters there. And I just really think it works. And I'm really excited about it.
Well, we're going to take a break, Jason. And when we come back, absolutely breaking news that I think could be the most important thing that happens this week. Unfortunately, we have a lot to talk about when we come back from the break. We'll be right back. As we see our loved ones age and experience the effects ourselves, it's natural to start thinking about long-term health, especially brain health. And one thing I've found helpful is Thesis. Thesis isn't just another supplement. Each nootropic blend is made with natural ingredients and designed to support and enhance your cognitive health. Long-term use can improve brain function, memory, focus, and overall mental performance. And it's an easy addition to your routine with a big impact. Here's how it works. You take a short quiz about your lifestyle and goals, and Thesis identifies the best nootropic blend for you. And then you receive a starter kit with 4 different blends to test over 4 weeks. And it's all about finding what works best for you. And then Thesis coaches are available to guide you through the process. Thesis offers 6 unique blends: clarity, creativity, logic, energy, motivation, and confidence, and all are made with non-GMO, vegan, and gluten-free ingredients tested for purity and potency. Thesis is the best nootropic blend I've ever tried, and I've never taken something before that feels so tailored to me. It's effective, it's easy to use, and it's backed by science. Take the 3-minute quiz to find out what your brain needs. Head to takethesis.com and use the code MAJORITY to save $60 on your first subscription order when you sign up for Thesis. That's $60 off your first order at takethesis.com. Promo code MAJORITY. That's TAKETHESIS.com with promo code majority. Get everything you know about fasting. Prolon by L Nutra is different. It's the only patented fasting mimicking diet that combines the benefits of fasting with a science-backed nutrition plan, allowing you to reach your health and weight loss goals without having to give up all the food. Prolon is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes your body while making your cells believe they're fasting. It was developed at USC and in their Longevity Institute, and it's backed by leading U.S. medical centers. Prolon supports healthy blood sugar, cardiovascular health, and reduces abdominal fat. But here's the key. Prolon isn't a diet. It's science. It's based on Nobel Prize winning discoveries in medicine. It starts with Prolon's 5-day program, snacks, soups, beverages designed to keep your body in a fasting state. It's truly a unique experience. And Prolon has been my go-to choice for when I want to drop a few pounds and get my nutrition in check. It's convenient, it's backed by Nobel-winning science, and it works. So right now, Prolon is offering Majority 54 listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. You can go to ProlonLife/Majority54. That's PROLON life.com/majority54 for the special offer. Well, breaking news, Jason. RFK Jr. has announced that he is going to be giving a speech on Friday in Arizona where he addresses the nation on the state of his campaign or some language like that. It is the same day that Trump is set to be in Phoenix on Friday. Critical context here before we discuss this is that his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, appeared on Tom Value's podcast called Impact Theory earlier in the week and made some comments that turned some heads, all about how they were, contemplating the state of the race. They may drop out, but if they dropped out, they would consider endorsing Trump because they basically viewed the Walz-Harris ticket as more of a threat to the country. I was wondering, are they going to walk this back or not? Because this is just Shanahan, who hasn't been that public talking. This doesn't necessarily reflect the views of RFK Jr., who reportedly the week before was seeking a position in the Harris administration and was knocked down. But then Shanahan went on Fox News. Let's look at this clip.
You made some big news today, talking about the Kennedy-Shanahan ticket. Does it stay in the race, Nicole? What are your thoughts on that?
It's Bobby's decision. I came into this supporting him wholeheartedly to win this election. Mm-hmm. And I have to say there's only one party that has obstructed a fair election for us. And unfortunately, it was the Democratic Party. They've done everything they can, including creating PACs to prevent us from being able to have ballot access.
Yeah, it's interesting because you were saying that you could stay in and run the risk of Kamala Harris win, or you could walk and you could join forces with Donald Trump. When you say join forces, Nicole, what do you mean specifically?
Well, this idea of a unity party, an idea of us coming around these principles of fighting for liberty in this country, fighting for our children's health. We have the worst chronic health crisis in the world right now. Over 50% of children are diagnosed with some chronic disease. This is unconscionable. Yeah. And we are willing to work with anyone who is sincere in their endeavor to fix and address this issue.
Do you believe the Trump campaign and Trump himself is sincere? Do you see a home? You talk about this as being Bobby's decision. Do you see a home for RFK Jr. in the Trump administration, Health and Human Services, something to that extent?
I would fully support it. I would fully support a strong partnership dedicated to this issue. A lot of people comment that in his first term he didn't accomplish many of the things that mothers really were hoping he would do. Made some big mistakes around the pandemic. However, I think that he is sincere.
Yeah,
I do.
I think it's interesting because the National Review today kind of.
All right, Jason, I think that's enough for her.
Yeah, give me your take on what we should do about this, because I think mine's different.
Couple of things. I haven't had enough time to think about it, if I'm being honest, but my initial reaction is there are a couple of ways to differentiate this. Number one is to make clear that Harris was approached by this guy and said no, and that's the difference between her and Trump, is that she's like, look, I'm not going to put a quack in charge of HHS or whatever promise he's getting. I'm going to be more rigorous. I think inevitably that's going to happen. I think the extra step, which I just tweeted, which I have no idea whether I fully believe this or not, is do you go a step further? And I actually believe they should do something like this anyway, is like announce a couple of cabinet picks, and it doesn't have to be right away because obviously you have to do some work here. Who's that signal that, hey, we're going to be more serious and this is going to be a younger, more dynamic administration than you've seen in the past, and you can empower surrogates on your behalf. An example would be like Mayor Pete for Secretary of State, which elevates his gravitas when he goes on places like Fox News, et cetera, or Josh Shapiro for DOJ, et cetera, so that you can create that contrast. We turn this quack down and we have these super competent people ready to roll, and it elevates them as surrogates. I don't know if I fully believe that, but that was my first reaction.
So here's why I disagree. One, you're on the right trajectory. And if you start getting into details about what your administration is going to look like in terms of individuals, then what you do is, for all the good, there's tons of good that comes with bringing on Pete. There's tons of good that comes with bringing on Shapiro, all that. There's also, like any politician, there's also baggage that comes with it that's not even particular to them. The baggage would be, if you're naming particular cabinet posts, you're inviting the campaign to stop being about freedom, stop being about, momentum versus weird, and start being about whatever policy area you just named a cabinet post for. So I wouldn't do that. But here's the other thing I would do is I would look at this and I would say, I'm not going to go try and get the RFK Jr. people, because I think there are very few people who were for RFK Jr., but undecided about who their second choice would be. There are some people who were for RFK Jr., but, if RFK Jr. were not running, they would pick Kamala. I think there were more people who, if RFK Jr. weren't running, they would pick Trump. And so I think that is set in stone. So what I would do is I would go after the still decent sized population that was already undecided between Trump and Harris, and I would make them own RFK Jr. I would make RFK Jr. the second running mate of Donald Trump, because what has been the most effective attack so far on Trump in this campaign and on Vance, it's been that they're weird. They're unpredictable, they're strange, and they're out of touch. And of the candidates running in the last several years, it is hard to find somebody who has been stranger than RFK Jr. Not just stuff he says about vaccines, the stuff he said about Jews, the brainworm thing, the fact that he killed a bear and then put it in a park. Like, I would treat RFK Jr. like he is the second running mate of Donald Trump. And that's how I'd approach it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And the tricky thing here is you run the risk, because some of his supporters, and I was going through their tweets today, they're saying things like they're upset that he dropped, and they a lot of them hold Trump accountable for lockdowns, right? So one thing we got to be careful about is some of these people may not vote at all, and so you want to somehow attach Trump to RFK and the weirdness of RFK without motivating their supporters, right? Because we're talking about 3% of the electorate, right? So how you do that, I don't know. I'll leave that up to Liz Smith, who's been on the RFK beat, and others in that camp. It is, but I do want to be honest with our audience. This is a massive risk. This is not a small thing. It's happening on Friday, which is also not good, because it's basically it's timed to try to steal momentum coming out of the convention. This is not a small thing, and it has to be handled well. I don't, with 30 seconds of planning time, don't have an immediate, well thought out plan. I think what you're saying makes a little bit more sense than my initial reaction was. But it is a real risk, and I said this when the Rogan thing happened, so I want to be consistent. When Rogan endorsed RFK, I said that is a real risk to Trump. I think this on the other side, for the same reasons, is a risk to Harris. I do think she could manage it.
What I would emphasize, though, is that I don't think this is a result. I mean, yes, a lot of this is a result of RFK being like, well, I just want to cut a deal. I want to get something for myself. I mean, that's a lot of it. But a lot of it is that it's not like, I don't think there's been a moment in this campaign where anybody serious, either RFK Jr., if he counts as serious, or anybody on his side who actually thought he was going to win. I don't think there's been any of that. Maybe they deluded themselves that much. I think this is like, it's not just like, we don't have a path to victory. I think there's a lot of places where they didn't have a path to the ballot.
Right.
And so what that means is that their ability to even be a spoiler was diminishing. And so I think what you have to keep in mind with regard to the strategy is that they were on a trajectory for most of their voters who were partial to Trump, if not him, to go to Trump anyway. So to me, it doesn't change much of where this race was going.
Yep. Well, okay, let me give you a rundown. So I spent the day, because we're so caught up in this euphoria of the convention, that I think it's important to take a step back and say, well, what's happening on the right, and what messages are they testing or trying out or percolating through the right that we could see puncturing through this bubble that we're in over the next few weeks? And so I wanted to kind of run through with you, Jason, and the audience, just a few things that I saw that are interesting. And some of these I'll knock down, and I'll be honest where I think some of them have a little bit more staying power. So, okay, first thing, there was jobs numbers that came out today, revised from March, that show that the numbers from March, the jobs numbers are revised down. So we have more unemployed people than previously thought. One right winger on Twitter tweeted the following. He says, another way to describe a jobs number revision is that the Biden-Harris administration lied to make their record look better than it really was. Up to 1 million jobs they claim to have been created are actually no longer there. They cooked the books, yada, yada, yada. This one we can knock down pretty fast, although it's all over the place on the right-wing ecosphere. And the easiest way to do so, there's this guy, Joe Wiesenthal from Bloomberg, who tweeted out what this particular metric means. And he pointed out that 4 of the past 6 years, they've revised it down, including the last 2 years of the Trump administration. Not much to talk about here. Put that one aside. One that I think you're going to hear a lot about is Tim Walz and IVF. And I think this is going to be one that you're going to see in the vice presidential debate. They're going to keep hitting him on it. And essentially, from what I understand, Tim Walz, his wife clarified that they did not use IVF, but they used something I think called IUI. And I don't even claim to know the difference between these things. There's a helpful tweet from the Dispatch that clarifies that Mike Pence also incorrectly used the term IVF when in reality they use a different assisted reproductive technology called GIFT. But the tweet also goes on to say that this creates problems for Walz because of the nature of what this is and how it's not IVF and yada, 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 yada. Do I think this is going to matter in this election? No, but you are going to hear about it. So that's why I mentioned this. I don't know if you have anything to say about this particular
I think that when people bring this up to you, the first thing you say is, yeah, well, did you know the difference before this controversy? And the person you're talking to is going to be like, no. Or you could be like, I didn't. And I don't think it's that surprising that Walz didn't either. What he knew is he was going to a fertility doctor and that they ended up with kids. You know, I mean, it's pretty like we're learning about all sorts of fertility treatments that we didn't know about. So the idea that he has some version of stolen valor that has to do with fertility treatments is kind of silly. But then what I would do is I would bring it back, because if what they have is their supporters talking about IVF all the time, awesome. Because then I would just bring it right back to, but isn't the point here that whether or not the next vice president had to use IVF for his family to be able to, you know, actually exist, that's not actually the issue. The issue is that tons of people do, and he's fighting for those people. And that's why I agree with him. I don't really care what the biological details were for the Walz children to enter the portal. What I care about is the fact that a lot of people enter the portal that way. And one side is against it, and that's scary. Like, so I behoove them to make this a controversy.
What they're going to do, and they're doing right now, is they're trying to paint Walz as a serial embellisher, liar, etc. And I think by and large, this isn't going to matter, with one exception, which is it's possible that the last collective moment of this campaign is going to be the vice presidential debate. And it's going to be really important for Walz to handle what is going to be a very messy and aggressive line of attack from Vance, who in all of his public appearances has really leaned into his Biff Tannen ethos and has just been going right at Walz. And so Walz has got to be Walz, and he's got to be like, he's got to brush it off, and he's got to keep pivoting back to Harris and what the campaign is about, which is the future and all that. But we have plenty of time to talk about that. Let me talk about a couple other things.
Hold on. I would say my advice to Walz and to anybody defending him is to not defend it. But you don't condemn it. Just be human and just be like if I were Walz, I'd be like, yeah, ask my kids. They'll tell you sometimes I don't get the details right.
Yes.
You know? And sometimes when I talk, you know, sometimes my words get out ahead of my brain. Like, and just be, because that's his persona anyway. And it's very clearly the case. I would just lean into it.
Yeah. I totally agree. And we'll get to that when we talk about the vice presidential debate. One ugly moment, Andy Beshear went on TV and said something that ricocheted through the right-wing media sphere. Let's go to this clip.
I mean, think about what some people have had to go through because of these laws. I mean, J.D. Vance calls pregnancy resulting from rape inconvenient. Like, inconvenience is traffic. I mean, make him go through this.
Well, Jason, so this it caused a lot of people in right-wing media to go crazy. J.D. Vance tweeted, "What the hell is this? Why is Andy Beshear wishing that a member of my family would get raped? What a disgusting person." It's important to note that the video cuts off right before Beshear says that fails any tests of decency of humanity. I do think a fair reading of what he said was he was saying that. Now, I would have some questions for Beshear's communications people, but that is referring to the hypothetical he was giving. I think that's the fair reading of it.
He was saying, you know, if JD Vance could get pregnant, he'd have a different view. And and so if you're Beshear or anybody else, you say this is what he meant. Obviously, he said it in a dumb way, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? To be real, I don't even think he said it in that dumb of a way. Like, you would rather rearrange the words, but like, he clearly was not saying that JD Vance or anybody in his family should be raped. And I would just be like, look, if I were asked about it, I'd be like, hey, that's not how I would have put it. But also, can we be real that JD Vance is in an awful big hurry to make himself a victim if he's going to try and make it seem like that's what Andy Beshear was saying when he clearly didn't mean that? Like,
for sure,
I would put it back on Vance and be like, why is he so desperate to be a victim here? Nothing happened to him. The point is, has no empathy for actual victims.
It's funny. That's literally what Beshear said. He said it's ridiculous, but it's also a deflection. He said J.D. Vance knows that he and Donald Trump are so wrong in the issue, and he's trying to make himself a victim. So that's essentially what Beshear said.
There you go.
I do think that's an important frame, right? There's this whole weird frame, right, which I think people can get carried away with. And I'm glad I haven't seen too much of it during the convention. I actually think that's not accidental. Because we don't want to get we don't want to oversell that line of attack. It's in the bloodstream.
Well, at some point, you start to sound like a bully.
Yes. And you also sound like you're high on your own supply and that you think that it's more important than it really is. I do think this tendency to lean into victimhood is an important frame that you mentioned, and I see it everywhere. I even talked to the audience at Lost Debate directly about this in a podcast I released today, where I was just like, I get these messages and I love my audience, but it's like sometimes the more right-wing people in my audience are like, they're like grievance hunting. They're like, you didn't mention X, and like, what is it? And I'm like, look, guys, like, you were cheering me on.
The left does the same thing sometimes.
Yeah, well, I said to the audience today, I was like, look, you guys are the same people who were cheering me on when I said Biden was too old to run, and you were so excited about that. But now that I'm hitting Trump every day because I have now turned my critical lens on him, all of a sudden you feel like you're the victim. I was like, settle down. Okay, one more thing, and audience, I'm not saying these are important hits. I'm just trying to give you the best approximation of what the right thinks is important this week. They are, so Michelle Obama had some things to say about generational wealth and not taking more than you need and yada, yada, yada. The right wing has taken it to say that, hey, these are hypocrites. And this is a Clay Travis tweet. He said, quote, Michelle Obama says her parents were suspicious of people who took more than they need. The Obamas have 3 $10+ million houses, DC, Martha's Vineyard in Hawaii. I don't begrudge multiple homes or wealth, but the hypocrisy here is staggering.
There's no hypocrisy here, but go ahead.
Just doesn't matter, honestly.
Yeah.
There were things I saw, and I even tweeted one of these where it was like, JB Pritzker made a joke about I'm a real billionaire. And I even tweeted this because I try to be honest. I was like, the Pritzkers, they, like he inherited a lot of that money. And of course, Trump did too, but I'm not sure any of this wouldn't have made my vet if I were vetting this speech. Mm-hmm. None of it is going to matter. My big take on this was I haven't followed what the Obamas have been up to other than like some mediocre stuff on Netflix and Spotify, which good for them. These houses are awesome. That was my take. It's like their house in Martha's Vineyard is baller. I was like, wow, good for them. Great house. That was my take.
Look, if somebody brings this up, here's what I'd say. I'd say, first of all, they're not up for re-election. The Obamas are not on the ballot. Second of all, the idea that her saying that people taking more than they need means people should not be allowed to have nice things or be rich is ridiculous. When we talk about people taking more than they need, taking is the operative term,
Right.
as in taking it from other people. The Trump administration was notoriously corrupt. Trump has built the wealth that was not given to him by his family. He built by taking from other people, by stiffing people, by screwing people over. Then now what's he do? He sells Bibles, and he's using money that he raised for one thing to pay for other things that defer his own personal expenses. That's what she's talking about. She's talking about people who take advantage of other people and get things at the expense of other people. That's clearly what her parents meant. It's clearly what she meant. And I would just say, and I agree with her on that. And, that's not how Trump has done things. And that's the point she's making.
Yeah. This is not going to be a hit to the battleship in any serious way. Just mentioning.
By the way, they want us so badly to be the anti-wealth party, the anti-money party. That's who they want us to be. It's why they talk about Bernie Sanders having more than one house. It's why when they talk about Al Gore being
flying private
guy, but then flying private. They talk about you name it. Like, that's their favorite thing, is to act like being opposed to government just subsidizing people who are already rich is somehow inconsistent with becoming financially successful. That you are a hypocrite if you become financially successful and criticize handouts to other already financially successful people. Let me just say, I've been, over the last several years, much more fortunate because Diana her career has gone extremely well. And so, we're not making Obama money, but we're doing pretty well. We were able to do things like, make some renovations to the house and stuff like that. And we're even at a point where we have a financial advisor, a person who we go see quarterly. And I think one of the things that makes me a Democrat is that when I sit with the financial advisor, and who's a lovely person, who then tells us about things in the tax code that are going to benefit us, and they get excited about it, and they'll be like, "Hey, we could do this with the money. We can put it here," and she doesn't understand why I sit there and I get really angry. And she's like, what are you upset about? And I'm like, this is so unfair. When we didn't have any sort of wealth, we couldn't take advantage of anything like this. For instance, I recently learned that you can use your 529 plan to pay for private school, not just for college. Okay, I'm sorry that, and look, maybe this makes me a hypocrite. That's the law. And so, yes, I don't remember if we're doing that, but I wouldn't be opposed to doing that. But it doesn't mean that I can't have the ability as an intelligent person to sit there and go, that is unfair and that should be changed. You can play by the rules of the game as they exist while actively advocating for those rules to change. And it does not make you a hypocrite. It makes you self-aware.
Well, quick update here on the fundraising front. Teddy Schleifer at the New York Times tweeted out a bunch of helpful stuff because we got the information from the July filings. I won't go through it all. Just short version of it is that Harris raised a ton more money than Trump did. She's raised $500 million since she began her campaign. She has more cash on hand than Trump, and Trump has been relying on infusions from billionaires like the Mellons. And Timothy Mellon put an extra $50 million into a pro-Trump super PAC. All this, not worth going through in detail, but Harris had a good fundraising month, and Trump is staying viable fundraising wise. Will have enough money to make his case to the American public. But this race is really stabilized to what I think is a coin toss right now, and it's really going to be up to all of us to do everything we possibly can to help push Harris over the hump here, because although I like where we are, this is a particularly difficult period of time. Over the past couple of elections we've gone against Trump, he tends to to be at his worst point at this point of the cycle. He tends to surge in the weeks that we're about to enter right now. And so we just need to watch out for that. Obviously, he's got some tricks up his sleeves. But with that, one for us, what have you been up to?
I had a really exciting thing happen yesterday, which was interestingly. So I've never been to a Democratic National Convention, and I think I said on Twitter that this is the first time that I've been like, oh, it would have been kind of cool to go to this one, like, I mean, 2008 as well, but I was running for office then, and also I would have just gone as I don't know what, nobody, not nobody, but I mean, like, I had no capacity, I wasn't a delegate, anything like that, obviously being a involved Democrat, it would be fun, but I didn't go because and I was actually the other day called and invited by the Harris campaign to come and do the whole from the floor 1 minute Missouri thing. I wasn't able to do it. Russ Carnahan, our party chair, did it and did a great job. But I had a little bit of FOMO about it, and then I remembered why I wasn't able to go schedule wise, and it was that yesterday I went down to Jefferson City. And I was invited to address the leadership of the Missouri National Guard, the generals, the colonels, the senior enlisted folks, like 150 people, on the subject of resilience. And it was like an hour-long talk and with a long Q&A period and everything, which was really, for me, like a very special moment because, I'm a former member of the Missouri Army National Guard. I was a captain when I got out. So just the idea of like showing up and having like the 2-star general in charge of the guard, like greet you at the door, and the sergeant major of the entire guard, there to like make sure you get your parking spot, was kind of wild. But what was really cool about it was, and also strange, for those who don't know, after my deployment, I was a platoon trainer, which is to say I trained people to become officers. And I actually ran into 3 of my former officer candidates who were there. They're in leadership in like high levels at the Guard now. 2 of them are majors. One of them is a colonel or a lieutenant colonel, which is way higher than I ever got. And talking to them, it's on the one hand, very cool to see people you trained now are very successful in what you trained them to do. And on the other hand, did make me feel a little bit aged. But there was a really neat moment where one of my former officer candidates came up and she told me this story that I'd kind of forgotten, but is a maxim I subscribe to. And she said for her, the most memorable moment from officer candidate school with me as her trainer was we had been out in the woods. I think it was wintertime, and we'd been out in the woods for a few days, and it was getting pretty miserable. And we'd been doing a lot of like tactics training and all sorts of stuff during the day. But at night, you'd sleep in the woods. You'd put up your poncho to keep you dry, but then you sleep on the ground. And it was getting to be freezing temperatures. And we had really done the majority of our tactical training. And so we were supposed to stay out there one more night and then go back to the barracks in the morning. And I do remember this when she brought it up. She said that to their surprise, as they were starting to like get their stuff dug in to sleep outside for the night, that I was like, all right, everybody get in the van. Get in the vans. And we got back and I was like, you're all sleeping in the barracks. And they didn't, they were like, let's not say a word because he's going to change his mind if we say a word. People would not recognize the personality that I had as a platoon trainer. It's kind of like a drill instructor. You're pretty mean and loud.
I would love to see some video of this. I'm sure
there is some. There's a clip. I'll have to send it to you. But
amazing.
But anyway, so then she reminded me that when we got there, they were finally like, sir, why are we sleeping in the barracks? And what I said was, I don't have to train all of you how to be miserable. You already know that. And it is a maxim I subscribe to. And I actually got it originally from Sergeant First Class Matt Eversman, who was one of my trainers briefly on one exercise when I was trying to become an officer. And people would, if they recognize that name, it's because Josh Hartnett played him. He was the main character in Black Hawk Down. And I can remember a training exercise where it was pouring rain and I had not done very well. And I remember he said, and they brought us in from the rain and he was kind of questioned about it by an officer. And he said, you don't have to train soldiers how to be miserable. They already know how to do that. Anyway, so that was kind of a neat little moment down memory lane and it was special and worth missing the DNC for. What about you?
It's funny, you know, my only convention experience was 2008, and I was like in the belly of the beast, and I don't even remember a thing about it, even though I had like backstage passes because I was working for Axe at the time. But I don't even remember anything about it because I was so sleep deprived. In my world, I'm heading back to New York. I've been in Santa Barbara. Shout out to people of Santa Barbara, a great area of the country. I've been doing YouTube. I'll put this in there, and the guys will share it with you guys in the show notes and on YouTube. But I've just started doing videos pretty much every day, and there's like a combination of like quick reactions to things that are happening in the news, but also we're starting to put deep dive explainers. So we put a version of the Israel-Palestine stuff that we've done there. I'm working on a history of presidential debates, which is going to be really exciting. I think this audience is really going to love that. I have a whole video about like policy positions and all that kind of stuff. And so we'll put in the show notes and all that kind of stuff. You could subscribe to it. But again, if you're coming from the Meidas audience and all that, like, and you're used to like Democratic leaning stuff, I definitely say inconvenient things that you might not love all the time on there, because it's coming from the sort of nonprofit, The Branch, which is by mission supposed to be objective and nonpartisan. So just be ready for that. I had a Walz explainer that people tend to really like, but we're at the beginning stages of it. And you know, as Jason, as my mom has said to me, but really has asked me to pass this on to you, is that, you know, she feels like we have faces for video, not radio, is what she tells us all the time.
Oh, that's very sweet.
She's asking
better lighting.
She has commented on our lighting quite a bit, and I've tried to up my game. So shout out.
You know what's funny is I sit here, and about 3 feet that way is where Diana does all of her virtual workshops and stuff, and it's like perfect. There's lighting, there's a studio, there's like a really nice camera, and I don't know why I never use it. All I have to do is set. Well, I don't even have to set it up. I can just set this computer up over there, which is a laptop, and I just never do it, which is probably pretty dumb. Well,
we're so used to podding, and I'm the same way, that we haven't really adjusted to this world of like video. And like, you know, I'm now doing like more video now. Like I did Don Lemon the other night, where we watched the convention together on his YouTube page. And I'm like, you know what? I just need to put a light in front of my face, and like, if I'm not going to comb my hair, I'm going to put on a hat. That's like the extent to what I'm doing right now. But it's really,
that's a post-COVID world. That's all you got to do. Well, just for fun, I went ahead. I just put it in the chat here. So not in like in the internal chat, not that the ones.
Oh, I can't wait to watch
watching
this.
And see. But if the producers want to put it in the show notes, there is a link to it. It is a YouTube link to an old video that when I was a platoon trainer, the Missouri National Guard made about me and a few others a promotional video about the job, because they were trying to recruit good officers into the job, because me and the other guys were rotating out. So anyway, you don't see me yelling much in it, but it's me and the guys I worked with doing what we did, and it is a different version of me, so it's kind of funny.
Oh wow, I'm gonna share this with a Twitterverse right now.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, this was fun. Everybody, you know I say this every time, but you know, we have like thousands and thousands of reviews, but it always helps people find the podcast if you will go on and leave a 5-star review. Like, I'm going to emphasize it this time, like, and let us know what you think. It's been a little while since I got to sort of read that feedback, because people have just gotten used to watching and they haven't been giving us much feedback. We'd love to hear what you say. But thank you to the Meidas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.